about OpenAI ecosystems, and there's been a few talks about a few talks about AI already, and there will be some tomorrow as well, and that's understandable, right? Because AI is really everywhere these days, and only today in the UK we have heard the government's response on the public consultation of to the AI white paper that has been published a few months ago, with a number of measures that we hope will contribute towards building stronger OpenAI ecosystems, not just in the UK, but also beyond. So there's been announcements around additional investments, not just in upskilling government departments and providing tools to different regulators, but also additional budget provided in research and innovation. On Friday, we've had a report from the House of Lords as well about large language models and generative AI, with a whole range of interesting suggestions. So that's timely. So I hope in this session we're going to continue this conversation. This is a session in the open data track. So data, for me as someone representing the Open Data Institute, is one of the vectors of success. But I'm sure my panelists are going to tell you more stories about other factors that are contributing at building these ecosystems. And I'm very, very happy to welcome today three esteemed panelists: Peter Madsen from Google and ML Commons, Aleks Berdichevskaya from Nesta, and Miriam Reddy from the Wikimedia Foundation. So we thought no slides, because you have looked at slides for the whole day. So this is going to be a conversation. I have prepared some questions, but by all means, feel free to interrupt and to react to everything that my fellow panelists are going to say, and to ask questions. We have around 30 minutes. So I'm going to start us off with a few opening statements, maybe starting with Peter.
Thank you, Elena. So I have the good fortune to wear two hats. One is at Google, and one is as president of ML Commons. And ML Commons is a nonprofit organization focused on making AI better for everyone by building out the AI ecosystem. And specifically, we're interested in collaborative engineering around data sets and benchmarks. And I think it's worth talking about why we think those things matter. So for AI, data is the code. And I don't think that has sunk in nearly enough in the community. It is the data that determines the behavior. The models, upon which we spend a lot of time, and 95% of Nero's papers, are lossy compilers. They're absorbing the description of behavior out of the data. The tests or benchmarks are how we determine if we've achieved functionality. AI is highly empirical. We try our best, and then we test to see if we've achieved the goal that we want. And these two things operate in a tightly coupled feedback loop. The feedback loop is very analogous in many ways to education. The data is the curriculum, and the benchmarks or tests are the tests, the quizzes that you use to see whether the model has learned the material. And it's very important that we absorb this feedback loop, not only because it's what will fundamentally let us make good, dependable AI products, but it's very important for areas like AI safety, where we want the models to behave in a good way. And the way that we produce that good behavior is through understanding this data and benchmark feedback loop.
Thank you.
All right.
Miriam?
Yeah, next. Okay, so I'm glad you, opened the stage talking about the importance of data. I work for the Wikimedia Foundation, which operates Wikipedia. So I might talk a little bit about Wikipedia. Wikipedia data is free and open to reuse for everyone, and it's widely reused across the web, and of course is part of the training data of the large language model technology and a bunch of other AI technologies. And so the research team, I'm part of the research team at the Wikimedia Foundation. A lot of our focus is on understanding and monitoring the quality of the data, specifically for what you have said, because issues in our data easily and quickly reverberate across the web and across the technologies that use our data. And so quality means, of course, the trustworthiness of the information. So we want the knowledge that we share to be reliable and to be based on reliable source, but also the completeness of the data. And I think the completeness is very important as we think of AI technologies that we know large language models hallucinate in absence of enough knowledge on a specific topic. And so what happens is that often those topics for which we don't have enough knowledge are often underrepresented groups. So for example, on Wikipedia, you probably know the large majority of biographies, 80% of biographies is about men. And the global south is largely underrepresented. Most of the articles, the majority of the articles are about North America and Europe. And so there exists these inequalities across the Wikimedia ecosystem and probably across other open knowledge and open data ecosystems that essentially prevent us from having an equal representation of different group of people, different cultures, different geographies, and different languages. Just to give one number about how severe the language gap is on Wikipedia, I think German speakers are about 120, 130 million, and German Wikipedia has a little less than 3 million articles. Nigerian Pidgin speakers are also around 120 million. Nigerian Pidgin Wikipedia has about 1,500 articles. So this is how severe the language gap is, and these and other inequalities are amplified by technologies that then they don't know what to do in absence of data. They start saying all sorts of things about the groups that are already underrepresented. So yeah, paying attention to the quality of data, I think, is important to develop safe and reliable AI technologies of the future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, I think that's it. I think that was actually a perfect segue to me. We haven't practiced, no. It just worked out that way. So I'm a principal researcher in a team which is called the Centre for Collective Intelligence Design. We're part of the UK's Social Innovation Foundation, Nesta, and that's a really fancy name, but essentially what we do is increase participation in issues that have some kind of public sector importance. We work with a lot of institutions to help them leverage digital technologies to increase participation, to help them better serve the communities who they're kind of mandated to serve. And we work on methods like citizen science, crowdsourcing, digital democracy. But I guess the reason I'm part of this panel is because over the last 3 years or so, we've been paying a lot of attention to a suite of methods we call participatory AI. And that essentially means involving different stakeholders beyond developers and technology teams in the the conception, the design, the oversight of AI-based tools. And that could be starting at the very early stages of collaborative problem framing. It could be more focused on data curation, data collection, labeling. It could be more about understanding people's values in order to adapt the way that we develop models, so setting different types of thresholds and objective functions, all the way through to evaluation and oversight in the long term. And we've been trying to implement these methods in work that we've carried out with partners like the Red Cross. We've recently started working with the Met Office, and there's been a lot of kind of interest in these types of methods more recently. I don't know if you would have come across the OpenAI Democratizing AI grants that were published kind of earlier this year. And it's a really exciting time because it seems like there's a real interest in increasing the kind of involvement and voices of people who haven't typically been involved in that technology development pipeline. Whether we kind of believe that's going to achieve something positive or not. I think there's still a lot of experimentation to be done, and whether the kind of technology companies are committed to implementing some of what they learn through these experiments, I think that's still an open question. But I think that, yeah, there's a lot of potential there, and it's kind of interesting because the question that you raised, Peter, of like, why is it important? It's often one that we kind of skirt by. There's an assumption that participation is a great fix for all of the potential risks and problems posed by these technologies. And I'm not sure that we can afford to keep claiming that in such a broad strokes way. We need to start getting a bit more nuanced about what type of participation we actually mean, whose participation is needed, who actually sets the rules of those processes, what does success look like. And yeah, there's a lot, I think, of potential there, but still a lot to kind of dig into.
Thank you. So thank you for your opening statement. So we've heard three different but very complementary views on what success could look like in OpenAI ecosystems. So I'm going to ask a few questions myself, but then immediately I'm going to hand over to you. So think about what you want to ask the panelists. And I'm going to start with Peter again in the same order. So you talked about the importance of data. We're at the State of Open conference, so open data is something that we're quite passionate about. So I was wondering what your views, your experiences are around the role of open data sets in AI ecosystems, in AI development, and in particular, whether you think we would see the same advances in AI without open data.
Yeah, I think, again, going back to the metaphor that data is the code, we would not have the field of AI right now without open data. Open data sets like ImageNet, MNIST, LibreSpeech enabled people to do the experiments that led to the technology that we have today. I actually believe that open data will be even more important going forward. Not to say that it is the only approach. Just like there is closed and open code, I believe there will continue to be, or proprietary and open code, I believe there will be proprietary and open data. But I think open data lends itself particularly to two areas. One is places where transparency is vital. AI safety is one of those, where having people's ability to inspect the data sets is a key element of trust. Another area is places where community collaboration is necessary to build data sets for the public good. In particular, the environment and education, I think, have big opportunities here. You can imagine wanting to do things like tree counting globally, where no single program can construct a comprehensive data set, but you can aggregate them over time. I do think it's worth not only asking what can open data do for the ecosystem, but asking what can the ecosystem do for open data. Our understanding of data, this code that determines the behavior, is very primitive. We need a lot more research compared to the investment we've put into models to really understand it. We need a whole new tool stack equivalent to what we take for granted for code, where we have IDs and profilers and source control, and we have GitHub for open source projects. Imagine doing open source with no GitHub. If we build that ecosystem and leverage it for those critical transparency and community collaboration tasks, I think we can create the kind of data sets we'll need in the future, which will be living, growing, evolving artifacts like healthy open source projects that reflect our growing understanding of AI technology and the problems we are trying to solve.
Thank you. And I think, judging from the conversations I had today with some of the people here in the room and at the conference, I think lots of people would agree with you and would be very willing to join forces and create that data stack. So thank you for that. Miriam, I'm going to ask a slightly different question. I don't know if you want to share the microphone maybe. So Wikipedia and related projects in the Wikimedia world are already using AI in different forms. So I was wondering if you could just shed light on the sort of AI that you're using and whether you think it is successful and what would make it more successful, you know, for your goals and for your strategy?
Yeah, thank you for that. So the Wikimedia ecosystem is part of the OpenAI ecosystem because, of course, the output is reused by AI technology, but also AI can help us improve the encyclopedia overall so that we can better serve also all these technologies. And so there are the AI can help basically the three pillars, in all the three pillars of the Wikimedia ecosystem. Three pillars are one, the content that we read every day, two, us, the readers, that we read the content, and three, the contributors, so this beautiful community of volunteers from all around the world that create the content, curate the content that you see every day, technical contributors that contribute to the software, etc. Now, AI in the reader sphere is mainly used for search, but of course, AI technologies have been extremely successful in manipulating content, textual content, and most of our content is text. And so we can use this technology, for example, to classify text, detect edits that are potentially risky or vandalism, automatically score articles by quality or by readability. We can classify articles across topics. And then we can use AI to generate content. So we can use machine translation, for example, or generate snippets of article descriptions. And so one important aspect of all of these AI tools that we use is that we don't use them as they are. We use them in a broader context. AI will never automatically edit Wikipedia. It will never delete content from Wikipedia. AI will be a tool that the contributors, the editors use to help, speed up some of their tasks. And so in this context, the machine learning model itself is not an isolated piece of technology. It's part of a broader socio-technical ecosystem, and it has to be part of a community, and as such, it has to, for example, respect the principles of openness and transparency that based on which the Wikimedia community is founded. It has to understand what it means to generate trustworthy content. It has to be explainable because it has to be part of discussion that generate consensus about what is the knowledge that should go on the projects. And so as we think of the future of large language models and how they can be fully exploited in this ecosystem, we need to think about this community aspect and how these can collaborate with the community. And the other aspect is we need probably to think about how to build capacity for community members to use these models so that they can be used to create trustworthy content in a community kind of ecosystem. I can speak another 5 hours.
Maybe a bit later when we have drinks. Yeah. Thank you, Miriam. And my final question before I finally hand over to you, as I promised. So, Aleks, you were talking about this excitement around participatory AI, but also the need to unpack what participation means and what's good for. And I know you've been working on various projects in this space all over the world. So I was wondering, what is different in those ecosystems and projects in the Global South, for instance, compared to sort of the typical AI deployment scenarios closer to home? So what did you learn from those experiences? What can we learn in a global AI ecosystem from those projects, from those participatory AI projects? I know it's not an easy question.
That's a big question. I'll try and offer some insights. So just to give a bit of context, as I mentioned, we worked with the Red Cross trying to implement participatory AI processes, and specifically we worked with their teams in Nepal and Cameroon to prototype new predictive models that could help them work in a more anticipatory way when preparing for and responding to crises. I think so there's the obvious kind of component of just developing tools that are kind of fit for those contexts. It makes me think a lot about the way that we're setting research agendas around AI and investing money around AI, because the truth is there's very low connectivity in a lot of contexts. There's a lot of kind of data deserts, and the subjects that potentially could benefit the most from having a AI-based tool to kind of improve efficiency of processes. And yet there's not the kind of investment in those basic infrastructures, which I think is kind of fundamental. And then maybe just something which was a real lesson for us, because we really care about transparency, responsibility, and AI safety. And we went through a participatory evaluation activity with our collaborators in Nepal, where we were kind of exploring the tool that we developed and trying to understand what they thought were kind of the acceptable uses of that type of technology, posing different scenarios, explaining what the limitations of the model were, and when it technically should be used and when it shouldn't be used. And I think what was kind of challenging for us is that if you're comparing a technology which isn't perfect, but is kind of good enough, or at least much better than what is already in place, we were just met with a lot of enthusiasm. There was a lot more enthusiasm for the tool than we were expecting, given how imperfect it was. And I think that is just something to bear in mind, to really make sure that we are having conversations with the people who potentially stand to benefit most from this technology before we kind of are gatekeeping some of them for also kind of very positive reasons of wanting to maintain safety.
Thank you. I think this resonates a little bit also with sort of global public surveys and excitement around AI that show some differences between, I don't know, countries like the UK or the US and other parts of the world. Thank you. I'm going to now open the floor to questions from the audience. And I see lots of people who are looking very excited potentially. I'm going to go over here.
Licensing is an open question on some of these data sets. What is your thoughts about how we can get more precision in the licensing and more confidence in usage?
Okay, who wants to take that? Peter? Anyone?
Sure,
Yes.
happy to.
Okay, go ahead, and then maybe someone else.
I think that is a key element of the ecosystem for data. It sort of stands upon three legs: theory, tools, and licensing. I have a dream that one day you could determine whether or not you can use a data set without having a conversation with legal. But I think that this will require some hard work to develop the appropriate license families for data. I think the Wikimedia folks have done an amazing job. The Creative Commons folks have done an amazing job with pushing appropriate license families for creative works, and we're going to need to see similar evolution in the data space, and we're not there yet.
Anyone else before we move on to the next question? No? All right, here we go.
Thank you. So this is sort of relates to something you said, Peter, but I think it also picks up on your last question about technology being good enough. I'm just wondering about when you test, how do you test for unintended consequences? And whose responsibility is that, or should it be?
So maybe we start with Aleks first.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do we test and who's responsible?
So I mean, there are kind of risk assessment processes. There's adversarial testing, which has received a lot of attention recently. And I think by opening up some of those kind of testing of blind spots of models to involve like communities who might be affected by the use of specific tools could help us to really, kind of avoid some of the unintended consequences. I don't think we're ever going to avoid all of them. So this is where having really thought through kind of oversight and governance mechanisms after a tool is deployed is also really important. I mean, one thing that we did before conducting the participatory evaluation was try and understand from different groups in Nepal, whether it was Red Cross staff, whether it was local people involved in frontline response, or people who were affected by, we were specifically looking at flooding in different areas. We asked them to help us understand what they thought were the most important criteria when making decisions about what resources should be distributed after a flood, and then use that as part of the evaluation of the model. So not only thinking about like technical benchmarks, but thinking about some of the social kind of benchmarks that need to be in place before then releasing a tool into the wild. I think some of those things could help.
Yeah, I think benchmarks is a really critical word. ML Commons just launched an effort to develop standard AI safety benchmarks because we see this acute need, some way to help people trying to develop good policies for AI to technically ground that and to make these trade-offs between benefits and risks. Society's been here before. We've seen things like cars, planes, automobiles. They offer us tremendous benefits, but they aren't without risk. And generally, we go through this pattern where we get very excited, deploy them widely, have a bunch of bad stuff happening, and then try and figure out the standard benchmarks. And it would be great if we could short-circuit that here and try and come up with at least the best we can start with a set of standard tests. And they won't be perfect, and they won't cover everything, but we can do that while the field is relatively young. We're really just beginning to deploy these things, and we can get one of those iterative loops going. So by the time these things are, AI solutions are widely deployed, we have appropriate benchmarks that let us make good trade-offs and get those benefits while still managing the risks. I think it's really important trade-off to be able to make.
So I've been told one last question, please.
Yeah, sure. So, from public service, I'd like to get an understanding of how the challenges around extracting value from data and also the challenges around sharing data between organizations. I was wondering,
Yeah. Can I ask a clarifying question? What do you mean extracting value from data? Just so we focus.
Extracting insights from data, extracting value from data, yeah.
Insights. So the question is about how do we extract insights from data?
Or the current barriers.
The current variance. About barriers. Okay, sorry, I couldn't hear. I'm really sorry. Current barriers around extracting insights from data. So that really depends on the value that you want to extract. I think, like, from a Wikimedia perspective, the main barrier we have is language. So we have the encyclopedia exists in more than 300 languages, and we can extract information from, or we can distill information from this content. We can, for example, think about AI technologies that create summarization, simplification, that provides all sorts of insights also from this data, but how do we evaluate that? Because there are ways to make sure that, this the insights or the value that you extract is somehow relevant and makes sense for our communities or for our, stakeholders. And we can do this in a certain number of languages, but how do we scale up across different languages? It's something that we still haven't solved. For example, when we run surveys, right, across our readers community, there is the issue that, the number of translations that we can do is proportional to the number of speakers and representative of those languages. So for us, this is one of our greatest barriers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think we will have to wrap up, right? Yes. Thank you very much to the panelists.
Yes, please join me in thanking all our panelists for a passionate and interesting discussion.